We are talking The Haunted Hotel, or at least that is the English translation of this Indonesian ghost story. So this is a 2023 movie, and it's apparently based on a real haunted hotel in Indonesia. Now, the story focuses on two sisters as they move to this hotel which has been left to them by their father. Now, when they go to this hotel, they learn that the third floor is off limits to them because their grandparents tell them because there's renovations. But the elder of the sisters hears crying coming from the third floor and goes to investigate. And we find out that there's a particular room which is unnumbered on this third floor is actually haunted by a vengeful spirit and effectively curses anyone who goes into this room in a ring-like curse where they'll die in 3 days' time at the strike of midnight, being flayed. And our older sister is now cursed, and then a little while later the younger sister and other people are also cursed. Now, what will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So this movie plays a little bit like a kind of mystery, finding out the cause of this curse, who this ghost is, and trying to find a way to stop her and the reason why she's kind of cursing people. And as I say, the movie feels like it has a whole host of influences from other horror movies. As I say, it does feel quite similar to The Ring, where you get, those kind of few days warning and spooky things are happening to you within those kind of few days, and then you're going to die at a particular kind of time and things like that. So that's kind of very much The Ring. There's certainly influences from the likes of The Conjuring here, I would say. And it's kind of easy to spot. There's a variety of influences from a number of different factors here. So what do we think about it? What works in this movie's favour? I think it's set in this kind of cool hotel, which kind of looks pretty good. The actual production design looks fairly good, and we have a kind of an interesting kind of mystery. I should say the primary driving force of this film is trying to find out what's actually happened, the reason why this ghost is there, which does give the plot some forward momentum. It does take a little while to get going, I would say, because a lot of it is that kind of setup. But nonetheless, I think once we kind of get into it, it's an intriguing mystery, finding out the reasons why this ghost is doing what they are doing. They've tried to go for a different type of look for the ghost. I'm not sure it was entirely successful. We'll come on to that again. But at least, it's trying to get away from the typical long, dark-haired Asian ghost we've seen in plenty of other films. So there is that. There's a couple of reasonable kind of VFX shots here that are range from relatively spooky to pretty good. The effects are a little bit of a mixed bag. I'll come on to another effect in just a little while, but there are some pretty good effects here, and I think the story is relatively interesting. Obviously, again, it is sort of apparently inspired, at least, by a kind of a true story. I always find the acting when watching foreign language films a little hard to judge in regards to whether the acting was, the correct amount, levels of emoting when the dialogue is kind of being said. Because obviously I'm reading a translation, so it's not a like-for-like comparison. But I got to say, I think the acting seemed fine to me. Some of the story beats, I think, are a little on the broad side, but I think the acting seemed all fine to me, and as I say, it's a little bit of a longer movie, but I didn't find it boring at any point, and I think the movie was relatively kind of well paced. What doesn't work for me, I have to say, I think the ghost is a little weak. We've gone for a kind of a white-haired ghost with kind of pale face paint on, and it looks like a really bad wig with grease paint on the face, and it doesn't look good. So I can see why they've done it. They wanted to get away from the sort of typical grudge ring style kind of ghosts that we've seen coming out of kind of a lot of kind of Asian horror movies, and try to have a little bit more of a unique look. And it's certainly striking, but I think it looks a little silly. It looks like someone wearing a wig it looks like someone with grease paint on their face. We do get a few shots where it's just a bit more mangled, and that look a little bit better. But yeah, just when we kind of see her normally, I just think it looks a little on the weaker side, and thus takes the wind out of the sails a little bit in some of the kind of the scarier moments. I think there's a little bit of, although there's an interesting mystery here, some of the kind of the plot points I found a little silly, especially when we get to the backstory about why this ghost is effectively so vengeful and angry, you might say. And we do get the kind of the reasons for it without sort of spelling it out and kind of giving you spoilers here. I found the what happened a little on the silly side, to be honest, and the kind of the resolution that is potentially offered, again, I found it a little on the silly side, a little bit, that's convenient, isn't it? So I don't think the writing was particularly strong. It's not necessarily terrible here, but some of the situations that these characters kind of find themselves in, I found them a little bit on the sillier side. There are a couple of memorable kind of scary scenes, and like there's one scene, for example, where we have like a medical dummy that kind of comes alive, which still got the kind of the brain exposed and things like that. Looks pretty cool. But I wouldn't say this movie is jam-packed with scary set pieces. It definitely has a kind of a creepier atmosphere, but you can't help but think, this is so reminiscent of The Ring and other movies kind of like that, that it feels that it doesn't have its own identity as much, to be honest. It does feel like a little bit of a mishmash of other properties. So it ends up being a workable haunted house movie. I don't think it's necessarily outstanding in any way, but at the same time I feel it's good enough to at least warrant a watch, if you don't mind a kind of a horror and movie from Indonesia, and you don't mind reading this kind of the subtitles and stuff. And it does have an interesting idea at least, but it's just flawed a little bit here and there. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.